So we're going to go ahead and open the commission meeting. And so with that, we'll go ahead and start with a roll call.
Good morning, Commissioner Getzelman,
Here.
Commissioner Mendoza,
Here.
Commissioner Gomez,
Here.
Commissioner Hartzell,
Here.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Here.
Commissioner Work,
Here.
Commissioner Monsalve,
Here.
Commissioner Shaw,
Here.
Commissioner Deal,
Here.
and Commissioner Roberts is absent. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Commissioner Deal, will you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I guess this would be the time or the place to inform the public if they wish to communicate with the commission. So either through Zoom or through email. So could you please go ahead and give us that information?
Thank you, Chair. For individuals who are participating via Zoom today, you can participate during public comment on the Zoom platform by raising your hand, by opening the reactions at the bottom of your screen and clicking the raise hand button. And you can do the same to lower your hand. If you're on a mobile or landline phone, you can raise and lower your hand by pressing *9. Other ways to communicate with us is via email. You can send an email to pchearingcomments@countyofmonterey.gov. We do monitor that email during the meeting and do our best to capture any comments that come in. However, there is no guarantee now that the meeting has started that we will capture all comments through PC Hearing Comments email. When it is during public comment and it's your opportunity to comment via Zoom, if you are on the Zoom platform, you will be given the option to unmute yourself, and you would, at the bottom of your screen, press the microphone to unmute and then press the microphone again to mute yourself when your public comment is done. If you are on a landline or mobile line, you can do *6 and that will mute, and *6 will unmute yourself. These rules go for our planning commissioners as well. Also today, the Planning Commission is pleased to announce that we have the Wordly pilot program for interpretation services that we are utilizing. So to utilize Wordly during today's meeting, please scan the QR code that is on the screen or access the meeting via the link on the screen. And once you are logged in, please select your preferred language and click on Attend to join. If you're here in chambers, please use headphones or see the clerk of the board to use a listening device here in the front. If you have any additional questions regarding Wordly, please email pchearingcomments@countyofmonterey.gov for additional support during today's meeting. Thank you.
Thank you for that information. And with that, we continue with the items in the agenda. At this point, we're going to go ahead and go to public comments. And this is a time set aside for the public to comment on a matter that is not on the agenda. So is anybody here that would like to comment on an item or on Zoom that would like to comment on an item that is not in the agenda, this would be the time. Seeing none, then we're going to go ahead and move on with the agenda items. And do we have any agenda additions, deletions, and or corrections?
Chair, for the record, there are no agenda additions, deletions, or corrections.
Thank you. We move on, and this is agenda item where the commissioner comments and requests. Any commissioner that would like to make any comments or requests? Okay, Commissioner Shaw?
Thank you. So I wanted to ask a couple of questions. So this was brought to my attention. It's actually in the agenda item 2's packet, but it's not specific to that item. It is in the Land Use Advisory Committee minutes. One, they were both brought up by Mrs. Noble, and there were two issues, and one of them has to do with a leaking water tank of her neighbors. And reading her comments, I can empathize with the difficulty in getting somebody from the county to help enforce or look into what's happening out there with a lot of water leaking and then the mosquito problem. And I'm wondering if there's somebody here that can give direction based on those comments, who she should contact, or can that be put on someone's radar about this leaking water tank? And then my other comment or question, what she brought up about the kind of this forgiveness permits being granted, and maybe someone can direct me, would this be better addressed during agenda item 2?
No, I think what we can do today is receive this as an inquiry or request from you, and then staff would want to go and look at these items in those and follow up with the LUAC liaison as well as the individual to see if or how they may have been addressed already.
Thank you. I guess, so let me just expand on that really quick then, because I am curious about this as well. We've seen this before, and I'm wondering, what are the true consequences to somebody doing something like cutting down trees or grading without a permit, if they can then just come in and then get the variance and go ahead and get a permit? Are there any real consequences to doing this kind of ask for forgiveness instead of permission type of approach?
So just generally on that, not with this particular context, generally the way that county code is established is when an activity takes place absent of the required permits, our first priority is to restore back to original state. However, there are cases where restoration may not be feasible, or cases where an individual may wish to move forward regardless with the project, and we then could move forward with after the fact permitting. But per our code, and staff does attempt to first try to restore. As a general approach, we certainly could look into any individual case and kind of explain that a little better. And then, of course, there are certain actions that are more challenging once it's taken, a large old growth or landmark tree, once it's been cut down. Even restoration, takes years to restore. So there are some challenges to restoration and just time lags depending on the activity.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if I guess maybe my understanding is that there's not really a perfect answer to this problem. So thank you for the explanation.
I can say that staff, we have identified for some certain circumstances, we have been trying to work internally with our processes with code enforcement, especially for certain activities as they relate in particular to habitat loss and removal and management, to help navigate those a little bit better from the get-go. And it is on our radar to look at if there's some ordinance improvements that we could make to our kind of enforcement structure and approach, but those aren't really in the imminent future to be addressing. But we are aware of it, and we are looking for opportunities to improve upon that.
Commissioner Deal?
Thank you. I believe we also charge double fees for what that's worth. It's not a big amount, but it is something. My request is for an agenda item to review the Land Use Advisory Committee liaison structure as soon as possible, because we don't know who's supposed to do what. So I'd really like for us to put on the agenda to just go over that. It shouldn't take long, but it is important to get it done. Thank you.
Okay, any other commissioners' comments, requests, or referral for a matter that is not on the agenda? Seeing none, we go, let me see, where are we at? I'm lost now. Referrals, we're moving to referrals, and this would be any planning commission referrals. Staff?
Yeah, staff just wants to alert the commission. So the referral matrix is attached. What I've tried to do with this and will try going forward is, since the last time the referral matrix came to you, I bolded font where there were any updates or changes from the prior version. So really, I won't speak specifically to any referral item, but I'll flag for you that where there were changes from previous or updates to status, I did place those in bold on the matrix, and should you have any questions or wish to discuss any of the items, staff is happy to do so.
Okay, thank you. With that, moving on along to scheduled matters. And we go to the item number 2, PLN 210142, Cornejo Carlos V. and Lopez Cindy Hernandez. And with that, staff, if you're ready, you can go ahead and start your presentation on this particular item.
Thank you, Chair. If you can please share staff left. Good morning, Chair Gonzalez and members of the Planning Commission. My name is Fiona Jensen. I am presenting PLN 210142, Cornejo. The project site is located at 1909 San Juan Road within the North County Area Plan. The property is zoned low-density residential, 2.5 units per acre with a visual sensitivity zoning overlay. The proposed project includes construction of a 2,490 square foot single-family dwelling, a 900 square foot attached garage, and a 752 square foot detached accessory dwelling unit. The project also includes development on slopes in excess of 25%, the removal of 6 coast live oak trees, and the after-the-fact removal of 15 coast live oak trees. The subdivision that created the subject property designated the area identified as a septic envelope outlined in the top right of this image in blue to be occupied by a future septic system. However, the northern portion of the subject property, including its septic envelope, is encumbered by slopes in excess of 25%. The leach fields proposed to serve the residents with wastewater treatment are located within the septic envelope and thus require trenching activities to occur within steeper slopes. The project minimizes development on slopes by placing the septic tank in an area not constrained by steeper slopes. A small portion of the leach lines to serve the proposed accessory dwelling unit will also be located on steeper slopes. Finally, as shown on the bottom image, to create a level building pad to accommodate the proposed mat foundation, the proposed placement of fill will also occur on steeper slopes. No structural improvements are located on slopes in excess of 25%, and relocation of the 2,500 square foot residence would impact additional forest resources. Therefore, as designed and proposed, the project better meets the resource protection goals and policies of the 2010 General Plan, and the design and siting is the most appropriate given site constraints. The proposed project includes the removal of 6 coast live oak trees, shown in red. These trees are in fair condition and are located within the driveway and grading footprint. The proposed driveway configuration includes the required emergency vehicle turnaround, which impacts 2 coast live oak trees. The other 4 trees are located within the disturbance footprint of the driveway's simple and direct access configuration. No landmark oak trees are proposed for removal. Trees within close proximity to the development, shown in green, will be retained and protected throughout construction activities. In this case, the location of the main dwelling unit, the attached garage, and detached accessory dwelling unit are designed to take advantage of the flattest area of the lot and preserve the largest number of trees on the undeveloped site, which also helps to minimize grading and overall disturbance of the property. During staff's review of the project, it was discovered that unpermitted tree removal occurred on the subject property. The two images here illustrate current conditions on the top and 2018 conditions. The areas outlined in red demonstrate areas where tree removal occurred. The project arborist determined that 21 trees were removed between 2018 and 2024. However, only 15 of those trees were protected and required the granting of a use permit. Those 15 trees are shown here in yellow. Based on canopy size, the arborist concluded that none of these trees were landmark oaks. It is unclear to staff as to why these trees were removed, other than potentially premature preparation of the site for the proposed construction and potentially fuel management. Nonetheless, 10 of these 15 trees are located within the proposed project's footprint. To clear this violation, condition number 6 has been applied to require that the applicant plant 15 coast live oak trees on the property. Condition number 6 also requires an additional 6 trees to be replanted on site to mitigate for the proposed tree removal. The proposed and after the fact removal of 21 coast live oak trees will not result in a significant environmental impact and are the minimum necessary under these circumstances. The project was referred to the North County Land Use Advisory Committee for review on March 5th, 2025, at which time the LUAC voted to support the project as proposed. Therefore, staff recommends the Planning Commission find the project categorically exempt pursuant to CEQA Guidelines Section 15303 and approve a combined development permit to allow construction of a 2,490 square foot single family dwelling, a 900 square foot attached garage, a 752 square foot detached accessory dwelling unit, and associated site improvements, including the removal of 6 coast live oak trees, after the fact removal of 15 coast live oak trees, and development on slopes in excess of 25%. This concludes staff's presentation. Staff is available for questions.
Thank you for that presentation. With that, we'll bring it back to the commission for any questions or clarifications. Commissioner Gomez?
Just to clarify, there is no proposed actual structure on the slopes, right? Just the...
That's correct. All structural development is on less than steeper slopes.
Perfect, thank you.
Commissioner Deal?
Question for personal education is, I didn't know you could put leach fields on slopes like that. How does that work? Do we know? Normally, you have to look for a place that's flatter, because effluent has to go down and not up to the slope.
In this case, that northern portion of the property does slope down from the residence, and there was also percolation testing done to confirm that that area was adequate to support on-site wastewater system. However, I'd also ask if the Environmental Health Bureau is online, if they can respond.
Good morning. This is Connor Cappy representing Environmental Health via Zoom. The project was deemed adequate in terms of septic system feasibility. We received a feasibility report performed by Grice Engineering, as well as percolation investigation performed by Soil Surveys Group, and they determined that the slope portion of the property, while not ideal, is really the only suitable location for the septic system. And the septic system design was done by a qualified professional and engineer. You are correct. We would like septic systems, or leach fields in particular, to not be on steep slopes. But in this case, Monterey County Code 1520 does allow septic systems to be installed on slopes less than 30% in grade.
Through the chair, just to clarify, that's in the inland areas, or is that everywhere?
That's throughout the county.
Because I do know areas in Big Sur that have been limited from development due to the lack of area that was flat enough for it. That's why I'm just concerned about understanding this, which is new to me. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other commissioners? Commissioner Mendoza?
Now, is the project visible from San Juan Road at all?
No, it is not.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Monsalve?
Thank you. Chair, I'm wondering if we have, or if it's in our purview to request some kind of maintenance program for the replacement trees, in addition to just simply compliance or monitoring, but also maintenance to ensure the success of the replanted trees. And I know we can't ask anyone to guarantee the success of planted trees, but something more than just plant them and let's see what happens.
Through the chair, the applied condition does require a 1-year monitoring by a qualified arborist to ensure that after a year of replanting that they are still happy, healthy little trees. However, there is the ability to add additional language if desired by the commission.
Through the chair, I read that and I don't read that. It doesn't imply to me that the applicant is responsible to do anything more for the success of the planting than just plant, and then in a year, an arborist will come and assess. So I would like to, if we have that capability of requesting that the owner do more than just hire that arborist in a year to make a report, but also make an effort toward the success of those trees. Since trees were removed without permit, I'd like to see something more than just plant them and we'll get back with you in a year.
And so, as far as staff, would we be able to add something to that? And I'm not sure exactly, what the terminology would be, but would we be able to add it before, we go through the end of this process?
Yes, that is definitely something that we can add. There is a requirement that after 6 months of the replanting that there needs to be evidence demonstrating that they are continue to grow. At the 1 year, it is also evidence that the trees are successful and requires remediation actions if those trees have not been successful. But I am happy to add language that requires ongoing maintenance of those trees. And implementation of the recommendations of the arborist, which does require ongoing maintenance activities for those replanted trees, as well as the remainder of the property.
Thank you. Commissioner Shaw?
Thank you. In the LUAC minutes, it says that some of the tree removal was done before the applicant owned the property. And I was wondering, what is some? How do we know how many that is? And then this applicant still cut down trees as well. I just was curious, what exactly happened? What is the timeline and what happened there?
I will need to look into when the current owner took title of the property.
Any other commissioners? If not, I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing. And so if the agent or the owner of the project is here, you're welcome to come up to the podium and make your presentation at this time. And if you do, please make sure you state your name for the record. Thank you. None? Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and continue with the public hearing. And if there is anybody in the chambers that is here to either make any comments on the project, this would be the time to do it. Seeing none, is there anybody on Zoom or email that would like to address this particular item? Seeing none, I guess I would bring it back to the staff to see if there are any other clarifications or comments.
Sure. To Commissioner Shaw's comment, it appears the current owner took ownership of the property in 2020, and the previous tree removal of the approximately 21 coast live oaks and other unpermitted trees occurred in 2018.
Thank you for the clarification. So we bring it back to the commission for any questions, comments, clarifications, motions. Commissioner Monsalve?
Thank you through the chair. I'm also wondering if we could, or if we would be in agreement to edit in condition 6, the last paragraph where it says 1 year after the planting of the replacement trees, change that to annually for 5 years after the planting of the replacement trees.
Through the chair, that is in your discretion if you would like that change to be made.
Thank you.
And maybe I just have, and I don't mind having that. The only thing is, have we done that to other projects in other areas of the county? Okay, thank you. Any other commissioners? Commissioner Mendoza?
I feel 5 years is too long. I could see maybe a couple years. There's just so many things that could happen in a 5-year period of time, that you can't really guarantee any tree to be alive in 5 years. So I could understand if you want to maybe 3 years, but 5 years might be a little bit too long. If that's acceptable, I'm actually ready to make a motion to approve PLN 210142. If there's no other further discussion, I'd like to make that motion.
Okay, Commissioner Shaw.
I would second that motion.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor and a second. The motion made by Commissioner Mendoza, seconded by Commissioner Shaw. In discussion now, Commissioner Deal.
Clarify, is that with 3 years? What's the motion?
Yes, it would be with the 3 years instead of the 5 years.
Any other comments or clarifications? With that, all those in favor of the motion so indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. And so, let me see. We go to item number 3. And item number 3 is PLN 240069, Bechtel Corporation. I hope I said that correctly, but anyways, that's the next item on the agenda. And so if the staff is ready to go ahead and make the presentation, this would be the time.
Good morning, and thank you, Commissioners. Steve Mason and Fiona Jensen to present PLN 240069, the Bechtel Corporation application. By the way, we're going to be doing this in 2 parts. Ms. Jensen will be covering the pavilion and view shed issues, and I will start out covering the other components of the project. And so the project site is 2.7 acres in size, located on 17 Mile Drive at the intersection of Cypress Drive. This is in Pebble Beach in the Del Monte Forest Land Use Plan area. The zoning is low-density residential, 2 acres per unit with a design control overlay. The entitlement is a combined development permit to include 3 coastal administrative permits and 3 design approvals, 1 for exterior modifications to an approximately 8,700 square foot single-family dwelling, with site improvements including an outdoor fire pit, seating area, and replacement hardscape. Also, the conversion of an 1,100 square foot caretaker unit into an accessory dwelling unit with minor modifications, and a new 1,171 square foot pavilion structure. There are also 2 coastal development permits, 1 for development within 750 feet of archaeological resources, and a second for development within 100 feet of environmentally sensitive habitat, or ESHA. To the left is the configuration of the current project site. To the right, the proposed, showing buildings and hardscape. The structures are numbered: number 1, the main house; number 2, the ADU; and number 3, the site of the proposed pavilion. There are 2 areas of ESHA on the project site: environmentally sensitive habitat. Predominantly, it's indigenous Monterey cypress forest, is illustrated in green on the site plan to the right. There is also a small strip of coastal bluff scrub. This occupies only about 5% of the parcel, illustrated in purple on this site plan. Of course, Monterey cypress habitat, as you're probably aware, is a very protected resource. Accordingly, the project has been conditioned and will strictly adhere to the standards outlined in the Coastal Implementation Plan, which are intended to protect this habitat. A few specific points. All the structure modifications would occur within existing building footprints. No trees are proposed for removal, whether dead or alive, and 10 new cypress trees would be planted. All non-native vegetation, including a lawn and ice plant, would be removed and replaced with native vegetation. During construction, protective fencing would be in place. Post-construction, a biologist would perform site inspections for 5 years to monitor the health of all cypress and other eschia on the property. A conservation and scenic easement would be placed over the undeveloped area of the parcel. And finally, a net reduction of approximately 4,600 square feet of impervious surface would be achieved. Also note, I misquoted this at one point in the staff report as 5,369 square feet. As far as the reduction in site coverage, most of this would be achieved at the area circled in yellow on the left existing site plan by the removal of the driveway leading to the ADU. This is a photograph of said driveway to be removed. There would be some new disturbance in coverage. This would be limited to approximately 2,300 square feet in area, highlighted here in yellow. This would be to accommodate new walking paths and an outdoor fire pit and seating area. According to the Coastal Implementation Plan, the applicant has two options to mitigate this disturbance. One would be to restore off-site habitat at a 2-to-1 ratio, or second would be to pay a commensurate in lieu fee to the Del Monte Forest Conservancy for them to implement off-site restoration and enhancement. And I understand the applicant will probably go with the second option, the in lieu fee. The Conservancy has informed staff that this fee would probably be applied to restore habitat within the SFB Morris Memorial Grove, which the Conservancy owns and manages rather. This is a site photo of the area that would accommodate the new pathways in the fire pit, the area to be disturbed. This is covered almost entirely by non-native ice plant. Accordingly, it's considered low-grade habitat. This is a photo of the project area facing southwest. The lawn to be removed in the foreground here and replaced with native vegetation. A view of the site facing southeast. This wooden fence is in poor condition, so this would be replaced. And you can see the ice plant. This would also be removed and replaced with native vegetation. As far as historical significance, the two structures on the property were designed by a noted local architect, Louis P. Hobart, and built in 1919. However, according to the Phase 1 historic report, remodeling has been so extensive that these structures no longer have any historic or architectural significance they might have once held. A Phase 1 and 2 archaeological assessment has been conducted. This turned up some sparse marine shell fragments. However, these do not qualify as a significant resource pursuant to CEQA or the California Register of Historical Resources. Grading will be limited to about 430 cubic yards of cut and 80 cubic yards of fill, and most of this at previously disturbed sites. The assessment concluded that no significant impacts to resources should occur. Also, the new structures set well outside the 50-foot coastal bluff setback. The modifications to the single-family dwelling would include a 182 square foot second-story deck, new trellising, replacement of all doors and windows, partial re-roofing, and the removal of one chimney, one of 3 chimneys, I believe. This is the north-facing elevation towards 17 Mile Drive. Highlighted is the existing structure, the chimney to be removed, the existing elevation on top. The proposed elevation on the bottom shows the new second-story deck. As you can see, there'd be little to no change in overall massing. The modifications to the accessory dwelling unit would include new roofing to match the main house, replacement of all doors and windows, and overall site improvements and modifications would include new entrance gates internal fencing, paths, and some hardscape. The colors and materials are fairly typical for the area: beige stucco siding, clay roof tiles, and copper metal railing and gutters. And at this point, I will hand it over to Ms. Jensen.
As with environmentally sensitive habitat areas, the Del Monte Forest Land Use Plan also recognizes that local visual resources are truly unique and that ocean views are a limited asset. Accordingly, the Land Use Plan emphasizes that these resources are preserved and protected. The height and massing of the single-family dwelling and accessory dwelling unit will remain essentially unchanged, and both structures will retain their beige stucco exteriors and clay tile roofing. These project components are consistent with the Del Monte Forest Land Use Plan's policies regarding visual resources. However, the proposed 1,171 square foot pavilion structure is almost entirely visible from 17 Mile Drive and raises inconsistencies with applicable visual resource policies. The Del Monte Forest Land Use Plan and associated coastal implementation plan establish policies and goals that are intended to protect the scenic and visual resources of the Del Monte Forest area and to only allow development that does not block or significantly impact public views and scenic character. These policies place special emphasis on all areas visible from 17 Mile Drive, including forest resources, the Pacific Ocean, beaches, shorelines, ridgelines, and Point Lobos. Policies include requiring that development minimize, if not avoid, obstructions of ocean views and incorporate modifications to ensure compatibility with public views. The subject property is located along 17 Mile Drive, adjacent to the intersection of Cypress Drive and 17 Mile Drive. Figure 3 of the Del Monte Forest Land Use Plan denotes the front approximately third of the property, highlighted in red, as being within the areas visible from 17 Mile Drive and Point Lobos. Figure 3 also discloses that it is only illustrative and that a site visit is required to confirm visibility. As confirmed via multiple site visits, the subject property and the proposed pavilion structure are visible from 17 Mile Drive. Accordingly, the property is in a location that emphasizes the protection of visual resources. Here are two images of the proposed structure's staking and flagging outlined in red and the ocean's horizon shown in blue. As illustrated here, the proposed structure blocks both filtered and unfiltered ocean views. Additionally, the proposed structure will be visible along the front of the property and will block additional ocean views. The existing legally established residence blocks a majority of the subject property's ocean views when viewed from 17 Mile Drive. As designed and sited, the proposed pavilion would further block some of the only remaining open ocean and partially filtered ocean views along this section of 17 Mile Drive. Although sited and designed to comply with the Del Monte Forest Land Use Plan's environmentally sensitive habitat area policies, staff is concerned that the structure's massing, colors, and materials detract from the scenic values of the ocean and introduce a prominent structure into the forest. Accordingly, it is staff's opinion that the proposed design and siting of the accessory structure have the potential to materially degrade the existing viewshed, specifically a viewshed that is recognized as being of public importance, by eliminating open ocean views and introducing a structure that is not subordinate to the scenic and natural environment. The Del Monte Forest Land Use Plan encourages that development be sited in the least visible portion of the property. Staff encouraged the applicant to consider design or location alternatives that would better protect public views, as seen from 17 Mile Drive, and to continue to be compatible with the property's environmentally sensitive habitat. However, such modifications were not made. The applicant contends that the proposed pavilion would have a less than significant impact on visual resources because the majority of the structure will be screened by trees. Ocean views are not protected by the Del Monte Forest Land Use Plan. The pavilion will be set back over 100 feet from 17 Mile Drive, and it will be minimally visible to the average visitor to the area. The applicant's representative claims that county staff has a flawed understanding of the applicable policies and regulations, specifically objecting to staff's assertion that public views of the Pacific Ocean or open ocean are protected. Contrary to these statements, Policy 56 of the Del Monte Forest Land Use Plan clearly protects views from 17 Mile Drive to the ocean. Inconsistent with this policy, the accessory structure has been sited and designed in a manner that does not avoid blocking public ocean views. In general, if development is inconsistent with Del Monte Forest Land Use Plan visual resource policies, it would also have a significant impact on public views and visual access, as these two conclusions cannot be made independent of the other. Similarly, if development were to comply with applicable visual resource policies, all of which require minimizing impacts on public views and compatibility with the scenic character, the development would likely have a less than significant impact on public views. Further, in this case, given the importance placed on views from 17 Mile Drive and the Del Monte Forest Land Use Plan's requirement that development not block or significantly impede public views, the introduction of any accessory structure along this scenic corridor that also blocks protected ocean views constitutes a significant impact on public views. The California Coastal Commission staff have reviewed the application and concur with staff's analysis regarding conflicts with the Del Monte Forest Land Use Plan, specifically those protecting visual resources. The project was referred to the Del Monte Forest Land Use Advisory Committee for review on October 27, 2024. The LUAC recommended approval of the project with a vote of 7-0, with 1 member absent. Therefore, staff recommends the Planning Commission find modifications to the single-family dwelling and accessory dwelling unit categorically exempt pursuant to CEQA Guidelines Sections 15.303, and find that denial of the pavilion structure is statutorily exempt pursuant to Section 15.270 of the CEQA Guidelines, and approve a combined development permit consisting of a coastal administrative permit and design approval to convert the caretaker unit into an accessory dwelling unit with minor exterior modifications, allow exterior modifications to the existing single-family dwelling, allow development within 750 feet of known archaeological resources, and allow development within 100 feet of environmentally sensitive habitat, and deny a coastal administrative permit and design approval to allow construction of a 1,171 square foot pavilion structure. This concludes staff's presentation. Staff is available for questions.
Thank you. With that, we bring it back to the Planning Commission and for questions, comments, concerns, clarifications. Commissioner Deal.
Thank you. I did have an opportunity to visit the site, and I did find it very helpful to do that. My first question is that it's in fairly tight quarters and access is fairly restricted, and there's an awful lot of construction going on in that area. I wonder if we could add a construction management plan for the approximately 35 10-foot, 10-yard trucks that are going to have to come and go with the cut, it looks like to me. So I just ask if we could add such a condition to address the fact that there's a lot of, I didn't see it, maybe I just missed it, that there's just an awful lot of construction going on in that neck of the woods right now.
A construction management plan has been applied as condition number 11. However, we're happy to modify and update the language if necessary.
Yeah, my experience coming and going has just been the construction continues to increase. The amount of construction that's going on at the same time continues to increase. And these construction management plans in the forest are really important to be specific, and that we need to talk about peak times, which probably aren't quite any noise anyway. So that was just one request, is we could really hone in on both in the specific case and in general in the forest, construction is beginning to impede traffic at a lot of different times. Yeah.
And through the chair, staff would actually recommend replacing condition number 11 with a little bit more of a modern language that requires implementation of protection measures of the property-sensitive habitat, clearly identifying stockpiling areas and identifying peak traffic hours that construction workers should avoid.
And probably routing as well. Thank you. And if I can go on, it just seems to me that we are seeing an increased amount of attention given to habitat restoration in the Monterey cypresses. And I just want to recognize that all of the removal of impervious surfaces and the removal of invasive species are going to add up eventually. And I think all of those are really positive, and I want to commend the applicant for having done that. At the same time, my question for staff is, can I apply for an non-habitable accessory structure of any size on any parcel? I mean, it seems to me there's a density of development issue here in terms of, I understand that the underpinning is already there, that the footing is, but can I just say, oh, okay, my parcel, I'd like to build a gymnasium, can I do that? Or is there any reason why an accessory unit would be limited?
Is the question specific to Monterey cypress habitat?
No, it's not related to habitat at all, on any structure. Can I just come in and say, oh, I want to build a sports pavilion over here on my property? Is there any limit to the size? Because I know that, you know, if you're building a shed, there's some things that require permit, some things that don't. But I just don't know if I can apply to build anything I want as long as I say I'm not going to live in it.
Provided the structure complies with the zoning district site development standards, which does establish at least lot coverage, in some cases floor area ratio limitations, as well as height limitations, and that structure were to comply with applicable policies, yes, you can apply for that.
Okay, so in our history, how do we determine that something is and remains a non-habitable structure?
The definition of a dwelling unit under Monterey County Code requires that a kitchen be included. And so that's one of the primary factors in determining whether or not a structure is a dwelling unit. It's also how an applicant proposes the development. If this unit or any other approved non-habitable structure were to be occupied in a habitable manner, that would be subject to a code enforcement case.
To follow up, though, are we allowed to have plumbing? Are we allowed to have electricity? Are we allowed to have everything else except a kitchen in a non-habitable structure?
That's correct.
Okay, and am I correct in I thought I got confused about the size. This is 1,171 square feet of structure. Okay, thank you.
Through the chair, if I may add, also, condition number 8, the Monterey Cypress Habitat Protection Part 1, there are 2 conditions that address 2 of the items you raised. Number 5 being that there must be no grading, trenching, or surface scraping inside the drip lines of protected trees unless specifically approved by a certified arborist. And also number 6, materials must not be stored, stockpiled, dumped, or buried inside the drip lines of protected trees.
Thank you. To clarify, my questions didn't have particularly to do with cypress habitat. They had to do with development on the lot. But thank you. I appreciate those.
Commissioner Shaw?
Thank you. I don't know if I really have maybe it's a question, and forgive my ignorance, because when you say pavilion, I have something completely different in my mind than what I'm seeing in the plans. So if you look in the plans, this is like a whole building with walls, a roof, a bathroom. It just doesn't have like the technical, like it has a kitchen in here, not that you couldn't throw like a little kitchen in there later. So I guess, is there any kind of, I see like the staking and flagging, is there anything more like a architectural rendering that we've seen before to really show just how much in a whole nother building? It's not like a covered outdoor area. When I think of pavilion, I think of a covered outdoor area that you might have a barbecue, you might sit around on patio furniture. I did not think, and this is possibly just my ignorance here, not understanding that of the technical terms in Monterey County, that a pavilion would be a building with a door, walls, windows, toilet, all that. So do we have something that would better show that, that we're adding a whole additional, it looks like a house essentially, not an outdoor patio structure?
The term pavilion is a label that the applicant and the architect provided. As a county staff perspective, it is a non-habitable structure that is being proposed. However, we do have, and I know the applicant will also be sharing additional renderings of what that structure will look like. If you give me 1 minute to pull those up. This is a view from the intersection of Cypress Drive and 17 Mile Drive. The staking and flagging shown in the middle image, and then the proposed pavilion or non-habitable structure illustrated on the right. Here's an additional view. And along the front of the property, this would be your view. I'm also happy to pull up the actual colors and materials if that would be helpful for the commission.
Thank you so much. That is exactly what I was looking for.
Any other commissioners? Commissioner Hartzell?
I saw in the discussion that you asked for the California Coastal Commission to weigh in on this. I'm curious, either from you or from council, what happens if we approve something that the Coastal Commission has recommended that we deny?
In this case, the property or the proposed project is appealable to or by the California Coastal Commission, and therefore the decision made by the commission is eligible for appeal and action taken by the commission.
Any other commissioners, or do you want to continue? Okay, Commissioner Mendoza?
Yeah, the question I have, I know in the past we've had other projects, and I know each project stands on its own merit, but we've actually had projects on 17 Mile Drive where even the fencing had to be a type of fence where you were able to, or you had to be able to see the ocean or what have you. So I guess, in a way, views are protected. Is that the case, or is that not the case? Because obviously, having that pavilion there would basically obstruct the view of the ocean from 17 Mile Drive. So that's the question I have. I'm just a little confused. It doesn't take much, sorry.
That is correct, that public views, including ocean views and views of the forest, are extremely protected under Del Monte Forest Land Use Plan. On the slide here is a recent example of a demolition and rebuild of a single-family dwelling along 17 Mile Drive, going from a 2-story stucco exterior to a 1-story structure that is almost not visible from 17 Mile Drive. On the lower images, you actually see a stucco fence that was then replaced with a grape stake-like fence where you can see through, and there are open ocean views. So this is an example that it was found consistent by the Planning Commission with visual resource policies, as modifications were made to significantly enhance those protected views.
I'd like to follow up with that. So basically, building the pavilion, how are we going to mitigate so you can actually see through it?
There may be alternatives that the owner would like to consider. A trellis-like structure would continue to allow for open ocean views. Staff would be concerned with creating a more glass-like or lighthouse effect if it was all glass. While that would allow for some visual pass-through, I think at nighttime there would be some concerns about interior lighting. So there are alternatives. Staff did recommend that the applicant consider alternatives consistent with the policies that encourage modifications be made to be consistent with visual resource policies. However, the applicant contended on the need for such modifications.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hartzell?
I saw one overhead wall in the project area next door. It was right next to a trailhead, and my understanding was that those types of things are for safety or privacy, but I just wanted some clarification on why there might be a big overhead wall nearby. No, we don't know. Weird question, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Are you able to clarify where that wall or structure may be?
It was next to the beach trail. The reason I asked this question, and I'm happy to kind of sit on it, is because I want to confirm that we're being consistent. I really appreciate the low wall at the Bechtel property, and I was surprised to see one next door that was higher. And I'm just trying to understand why there might be one nearby the beach.
So the property of question is directly adjacent to the subject property?
Yes.
Through the chair.
Commissioner Deal?
If I could respond, my experience tells me that if someone has built such a wall and has not done any subsequent development, there would be nobody asking them to not do it. I mean, things didn't used to be the same as they are now. And that's why you see in some of the projects we've seen before us where people have decided to change what was there for something that was different, as in the example staff has shown here. That had, as you see, an impervious wall. And then when they came in for development, they proposed this change as part of that development. But there wouldn't be any reason to tell somebody, take down the wall you've had for 50 years because we don't like it. I don't think we generally go around and do that.
Understood. Thanks. That's really helpful framing.
Thank you. Any other commissioners? With that, we're going to go ahead and open the public hearing. And if the agent or property owner are present, this would be the time to come up to the podium, the microphone. Please state your name for the record. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair, Planning Commission, HCD staff, County Council. I'm Eric Lundquist. I'm with Alpine Brody representing the Bechtel family. The Bechtel family has owned this property since the 1960s. It has been a long time enjoyment for the family. The next generation is coming along. They did do some improvements in the 80s and then in late 1999. But since then, nothing really has been done to the property. It has existed as it is with those modifications as pointed out by staff to the structure over that era. It's now time to put a shot in the arm to this property, bring it back into a sustainable condition. And so the Bechtels, as being good stewards of the land, have proposed a project in concert with staff, and we thank staff for the great efforts it's done to bring this application forward with substantial renovation to the landscaping, making it more consistent with Policy 20, providing a substantial renovation to the native cypress habitat. And the Bechtel family is also in support of doing a scenic and conservation easement, which is serving two purposes. The first purpose is for protection of the habitat, but it's also for protection of future view sheds into the future. I would, before I start on my presentation here, just like to point out that, and I don't know if the screen will eventually show on the left-hand side, but I have a few people online. Jim Westover, he's the principal of William Duff Architects, and Michael Bliss is the founding principal of Bliss Landscape Architecture. They're here. And also in the audience today is David Stoker with Stoker & Allaire, who's done many projects along 17 Mile Drive. Many of them are currently active, and he can speak, if necessary, to some of the historic developments that have occurred along this particular segment and other segments of 17 Mile Drive. As I pointed out, this project has come quite some way, and I would like to thank staff for all of its efforts in bringing this project to a condition that it currently is. And that was through substantial renovations to the landscape plan. Unfortunately, the landscaping plan was not included in your packet today for reasons I'm not sure. But that is partially the reason why this application and the process is flawed as it's presented here to the Planning Commission today. And it actually brings me great heartache to have to say that, because my colleagues and now friends are those that I'm speaking to in their flawed application. I would have hoped that we could have been here today without having to say that this application is erroneous and flawed in the particular instance of the view shed. Part of the reason why it's flawed, in addition to the landscaping plan not being included, is that staff has taken the position that an open ocean view is considered a significant impact on the visual access or public access. And that's not correct. Title 20 actually provides a definition for determining substantial adverse impact, which is the significance threshold under Planning Code, the Coastal Zoning Code, as well as the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA. As a result of this administrative interpretation, that is unlawful to base the findings of this Planning Commission on that administrative interpretation, because there is a process under current board policy for determining administrative interpretations. The Del Monte Forest implementation plan, section 20-147-070, actually speaks to a subjective standard, which is a level of significance. What defines significance? And again, Title 20 allows us the opportunity to do that, and I will get to that particular section here in a moment. Unfortunately, what staff has done by saying that blocking any open ocean view is creating an objective standard. And again, creating that administrative interpretation is unlawful. So just a little more on the administrative interpretation. It's creating a new definition for scenic public view, which is, this is somewhat of a pun is intended, but it's creating a very narrow view. So blocking any blue water, blocking any element of the ocean is seen as a significant impact, and that is not the purpose and intent of the Del Monte Forest Land Use Plan, nor the Coastal Act. In doing so, staff is creating new definitions for open ocean, filtered and unfiltered area. Nowhere in the Del Monte Forest or its implementation plan do those terms exist. Instead, the Del Monte Forest Plan and the implementation plan uses offshore, creating the difference between the open ocean and the shoreline. Staff indicates that Figure 3 of the Del Monte Forest Land Use Plan was not done intentionally, and we're going to go through that here in a moment. But in fact, it was done with purpose. Staff's suggestion incorporates, as they mentioned, a relocation of this pavilion structure, and this really is the only contention we have at the moment. All other things we are in agreement with, so I'd just like to point that out. However, it suggests a relocation that is in conflict with the Native Cypress Habitat Policy 20 provisions, and it continues to block the public ocean, so it confuses us. There's some contradiction in staff's presentation. This is just a copy of the board order from 2017 that indicates there's a process for making determinations for administrative interpretations. This particular image that you're seeing here was what staff suggested as a potential relocation. This is also what they're suggesting as what's blocking an open ocean view. I'm not sure what the difference is between one side of one cypress tree and the other is. To me, this is not a reasonable suggestion because they're both the same. It also goes beyond indicating these square boxes that doesn't take into account intervening vegetation or vegetation which goes beyond. So truly, what is the visual access issue? We need to, and what defines significance? We need to look at a few things. Figure 3 of the Del Monte Forest Plan does help us define what a significant public view is. Furthermore, Policy 53 goes on to indicate the elements that are considered significant in the Del Monte Forest. I've called out those that are specific potentially to this property, which is the forest and the shoreline. The shoreline is not visible from this particular property. There is a cliff and a bluff's edge where you cannot see the shoreline. In addition, those that are significant in the Del Monte Forest are stream courses and ridge lines, which are not relative to this particular project. The Del Monte Forest implementation plan also goes on to define significance as those trees that are 24 inches, native trees, which are 24 inches or more in diameter when measured from breast heights, or those that are visually significant, historically significant, or good examples of species more than 1,000 years old. Again, there is no definition indicating blue water, open ocean, filtered or unfiltered views are visually significant can be found in either the land use plan or the implementation plan. And here is the significance finding that needs to be made. Again, this is within Title 20, which is the Coastal Zoning Code, but it also speaks to determining significant impacts under the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA. It goes on to read, a substantial adverse visual impact means a visual impact which, considering the condition of existing viewshed, by definition, the proximity and duration of the view when observed with normal unaided vision causes an existing visual experience to be material degraded. This is the litmus test for the Planning Commission to determine whether this particular pavilion structure is a significant impact on significant public views. So let's take a look at Del Monte Forest Figure 3 for a second. I know you all are familiar with Del Monte Forest. If you look closely at this exhibit, you'll find that the green areas, which are considered to be the viewshed for public, I would gather that 80% of these are public or quasi-public properties. From the north, you first have Spyglass, where there's the golf course, running along 17-mile drive on that strip of land, leading all the way down to Spanish Bay. Those are all golf courses with open ocean views. If you pass through the stream and onto the other side where Fan Shell Beach is, there are no houses on the western side of Highway 17, leading all the way to the Monterey Peninsula Country Club. And I'm going to go to the next screen here real quickly. Here's a viewshed of that, so you can see on an aerial image the difference between the golf courses and where the private lands exist. Zooming back in, as you can see where my cursor is, all of this up in this area is golf courses with unobstructed views, mind you, of the shoreline, which is the protected resource. Now zooming in more southerly to Pescadero Point and Pebble Beach Golf Course. What I wanted to point out in this particular instance is between Lone Cypress and Ghost Tree, you have higher density residential properties that are much smaller in size and shape than all of the other properties within Pebble Beach. And those properties were created back in the 30s when the subdivision was established. I'd also like to call your attention to Palmero and Cypress Drive within the Pebble Beach Golf Course. You'll notice these little blocks of residential homes in those areas. Those are important to note because when we look back at Figure 3, again, staff says that this is just a visual representation. However, this map was done very intentionally. You can see in this particular section from the Lone Cypress all the way down to Ghost Tree, it was found that the shoreline was not visible and that the forest, the corridor of the forest, was truly what was needing to be protected in this particular instance. I call this out because the same thing exists in those areas of the Pebble Beach Golf Course. If the same was to apply what staff just indicated, then why are these not addressed? Because you can surely see the ocean from all segments of 17-mile drive from the Hay all the way down to the Carmel Gate. Unfortunately, the landscaping plan was not included within your packet today. I mentioned this is important because the Del Monte Forest Land Use Plan speaks to screening structures. Again, we're not asking for any after-the-fact tree removal. The Bechtel family are great stewards of the environment. They did not remove any trees, any landscaping in advance of this project. In fact, they're increasing the number of cypress trees by 10. And these are done intentionally, these plantings. They're done intentionally because the policy calls for the screening of structures within the forested area. Driving along in the southerly direction along 17, if you follow my cursor at the prevailing rate of speed, You will pass by the first driveway entry, and then, as shown in some of the other exhibits, you would have gotten a clearer vision of the pavilion. However, 2 native cypress trees are being planted in order to screen that view. In addition, a lot of photo imagery has been provided showing the view of the pavilion from the intersection of Cypress and 17 Mile. A native cypress tree will be planted at that location. You also saw an exhibit showing the gated entry with the arch in the middle. That will also be across this this driveway that adds to further screening of the proposed building. And with respect to the pavilion, some questions were brought up by the commission about its use and its intention. This particular area where the pavilion is has historically been a viewing patio. It's been served by umbrellas and chairs and glass tables, and they become weathered. They're along the coastline, and so heavy fogs, rain, and wind always affect them, creating debris that gets strewn along the property. And so what they're hoping to do is create a more enclosed viewing pavilion. This particular viewing pavilion will have what they call nano doors or sliding doors that will open up, that will create an opening that's quite large, that will allow them to have an experience outside just as you would with any other covered patio pavilion, with the added benefit of having a bathroom and a vanity sink. It is not in any intention to be ever converted to a habitable space. This will continue to be a viewing pavilion that will be used by the Bechtel's generations to come. The important factor of this particular area is that under Policy 20, this development area may be allowed to be built out as it's already existing as a development area. There are no other options to relocate it on the site, as that would go into the native cypress habitat. So staff has provided all of these policies within your packets. I don't need to go through them, but I would like to just continue to stress that the policies speak to a significant public view, and that determination has language in the code for determining what that significant view is, and it is not simply blocking any element of the the Pacific Ocean. Again, speaks to minimizing. It doesn't say strictly block any element. And so I don't need to read all these because you have them. Again, there's 5 or 6 of them that speak to significant public views. And this is not, because you cannot see the shoreline. However, the forest is the significant view, and that is what we're protecting here. I would like to point out this is a well-known case in the planning industry. This is Nolan versus the California Coastal Commission. Usually this case is referenced as a means to provide easements. And in fact, this particularly applies to this because we are providing a scenic easement to protect visual access upon approval of this particular project. But the question in Nolan versus the California Coastal Commission in 1987 was, would the new house increase blockage of the views to the ocean? The Coastal Commission's action, however, was based on the opposite actual finding that the wall of the house completely blocked the view of the beach, and that a person looking from the road would not be able to see it at all. In this particular case, the ocean is still visible, as you saw. It's not blocking the entirety of the ocean. The case goes on to say that the Nolan's development blocks visual access. The court tells us, while the commission seeks to preserve lateral access along the coastline, thus it concludes the state acted irrationally. Such a narrow conception of reality, however, has long since been discredited as a judicial aggregation of legislative authority. Again, I would point out the case goes on to say, although I'm not bringing it up here, what is a justifiable easement in these cases? There needs to be a nexus between the development providing the easement In this particular case, there isn't a nexus between the two. However, the Bechtel family, being good stewards of the land, are prepared to record an easement upon approval of this project. I would like to point out some precedent that's been set. In McAllister versus the California Coastal Commission in County of Monterey, in the 6th Appellate District Court in 2008, very important to remember this case in 2008. The 6th Appellate District found and concluded that the commission abused its discretion in relaxing restrictions on development without making the necessary findings to do so. So staff has indicated that each of the projects that I'm going to share here on the next few slides has different circumstances. Yes, I agree that the building massing, the setbacks, the sizes, all of that's different, but what hasn't changed? The policy and the regulation. It's been the same forever. However, we're now getting a different impression. If the impression when these projects were approved is the same today, then each of these projects would have had a finding that there was a taking, and in order to avoid the taking, they would have provided the findings necessary to do so. These particular projects, again, none of them had findings for avoiding takings. The first one we're going to look at, I went through every project from Monterey Peninsula Country Club down to the project site, which is that area on figure 3 that I showed in white. This particular project at 3168 17 Mile Drive was appealed to the California Coastal Commission. In the county's record, there's a memo between Brian O'Neill of Coastal Commission staff and Angus Jeffers indicating no concern over blocking any particular element of the Pacific Ocean. And you can see in this particular slide, it does block the Pacific Ocean. This particular project just down the way at 1380 17 Mile Drive, 2014 application, blocks the Pacific Ocean. It doesn't block the entirety. You can still see elements of the Pacific Ocean. In fact, you can see a fairly large concrete wall that, as you're driving down 17 Mile Drive, blocks the forest. This particular project at 3188 17 Mile, which has a 2016 application, blocks the Pacific Ocean. It's 2 stories. Again, if this policy that staff is now determining to be true, then 2-story elements would have been minimized. Accessory structures, there's a three-car garage in this particular instance with a storage building that blocks the Pacific Ocean. The project at 3196 17 Mile, unfortunately, the Planning Commission just had to grapple with this one because there are 14 trees that were just removed without permission. There was after-the-fact approval of the replanting of those trees. This particular project was approved, however, in 2015 originally, and you can see it blocks the Pacific Ocean. This particular project, Felicity, recently had a 2-story addition that actually penetrates the horizon line of the Pacific Ocean. This was supported by staff. This particular project, known as Feather Cypress, you saw elements of it. This is a non-habitable residential structure. No particular findings were made that this was approved to avoid any elements of taking. This project was actually approved closer to 17 Mile in conflict with the required setbacks, where in our case, we're pushing the structure more than 250 feet back. We're creating a low-rise element to it, where this is more predominant and supported by the Planning Commission as being an acceptable non-habitable accessory structure, but a year and a half ago. So to our project, you saw this slide already. We did an evaluation of the number of pixels that's being occupied on this particular pavilion project. It ends up being 12% of the pixels that are of the Pacific Ocean, thereby showing that we're not even if the significance was to block the Pacific Ocean, we're not blocking a significant portion of the Pacific Ocean. One can still see, as was determined in the Nolan case, that the element of the Pacific Ocean can still be experienced along this particular element or segment of the road. This just gives you a greater example of the ocean behind the forest. You did see this. I can go through this more quickly. I think this is important, again, because it shows the elements of the Pacific Ocean. Now, this is also important because this goes back to the actual finding that needs to be made by the Planning Commission in order to determine significance. So at this particular location, one is not standing like they would stand at a Vista Point. They're traveling in an automobile or a bicycle. There are no walking paths, unfortunately, on 17 Mile Drive or within the Pebble Beach subdivision. So in this particular case, you're going at the prevailing rate of speed, which varies. Sometimes it's above the speed limit, sometimes it's below, depending on traffic and approach of the intersection. So at this particular area, you have less than 3 seconds to see this particular advantage point. The same thing would apply at the other vantage point where you're at a stop bar or an intersection between Cypress and 17 Mile Drive. The national average for stopping at a stop sign is 3 seconds. In California, it's probably 0 because we all fly through our California stops. So as I wrap up here, there are not the findings and evidence as staff has presented. Unfortunately, it pains me to say that. I would have rather had been here back in front of you all in concert. There is not a significant adverse impact based on the definition of Title 20. It does not block a significant view. The forest is the predominant feature in this particular case. We're protecting the forest. We're adding 10 additional cypress trees. Regarding the finding that needs to be made for Title 20, there is not a turnout nor a viewing area at this particular location to gaze for an extended period of time out at the ocean. As I mentioned, the stop average time is 3 seconds, or the rate at which you will cross the property is 3 seconds. And the proposed pavilion is over 250 feet back from the intersection, over 100 feet back from the front property line. We are prepared to record a scenic and conservation easement that would protect all of the lands should this project proceed as currently proposed. I did notice quite a bit of conflict in the resolution, and I don't want to belabor them because they're pretty minor, but if the Planning Commission is going to agree with staff's position, there's some conflict in the findings. There's statements of partially block, there's statements of block, there's statements of needing a coastal development permit for bluff in some areas, and some others they're not. I would question why the administrative use permit is being denied, because residential and accessory uses are allowed on the property. There's no particular findings for denying a residential accessory use. I could see in staff's position denying the design approval. However, as I pointed out, that's inconsistent. So I would suggest the Planning Commission really take a close look at the resolution and all the inconsistencies within it, and based on the evidence and facts that I've presented here, and continue this matter till April 30th, and direct staff to bring back a resolution supporting the entirety of the project as the applicant has presented it, together with the inclusion of the landscaping plan, because it is very important to this project. And I'm here to answer any questions that the Planning Commission has. Again, thank you for your time, and I appreciate all the effort and consideration that you're giving this project. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Any commissioners have any questions? Commissioner Hartzell?
I heard you say this wasn't a habitable structure, so you agree with that. There are no plans for anyone to stay overnight or to... Is there any privacy reason why you would need a wall, a 50-foot wall, for this structure like this?
The length of the wall is to protect the occupants. There is some elements of privacy and security that they have and are accustomed to.
And is there any openness to redesign? Is the applicant open to coming back in April with different materials or different suggestions on the building?
I know that Jim is on the line, and I know that he's talked about other types of siding materials. If the commission wants to provide that direction on what it might think might be appropriate, we can address those as needed.
I'm going to hold on that for a minute. I may want to come back.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other commissioners with any clarifications, questions? Seeing none. Was your question more for the gentleman, or was it for the staff, or follow up?
I don't know.
Okay. And with that, then, I'm sorry, my microphone was off. Is there anybody else, part of your team, that was going to make a small presentation? If not, I'm going to go ahead and continue with the public hearing. And is there anybody in the chambers that would like to address this particular item? This would be the time.
Mr. Chair, could we have 5 minutes?
Yes, ma'am. So in that particular case, we're going to take like a 10-minute break. So we were at the portion that if there was anybody or anyone in the chambers that would like to address this particular item, this would be the time to do it. Seeing none, is there anyone on Zoom or any emails that we have? Okay, I understand we do not have anybody on Zoom and we do not have any emails. So with that, we're going to bring it back to the staff.
Thank you. Through the chair, Steve Mason, just a couple brief comments. Within the full context of all the policies which are listed on page 5 and 6, indeed, some of them do point out shoreline views. Some of them do not. For example, policy 56 states views from the road to the sea, and the Coastal Act policy also is more broad. Also, in the full context, some of these policies only mention the 17-mile corridor, which is a broader view. Some don't mention 17-mile drive at all, and I point this out because the photograph on the right is the view from the stop sign facing towards the property as you approach on Cypress Drive.
Staff would also like to clarify that removal of the landscape plans and the lighting plans were intentional. There are conditions of approval that require plans that are consistent and compliant with county policies. And in this case, the draft landscape plans introduced approximately 40 non-native New Zealand Christmas trees along the front property line, which both are in conflict with policy 20 requirements to restore the property to compatible habitat, as well as public view shed issues, as that would also introduce new 30-foot trees potentially that could block visual resources protected by the land use plan. In summary, there's no new information has been presented to staff that alters our recommendation for denial of the pavilion or non-habitable structure. However, significant allegations have been raised on current practice on this project as well as past projects that, if the commission desires, may warrant time for staff to research and respond.
Thank you. And with that, I bring it back to the commission, and then we have Commissioner Deal.
Thank you. I'd just like to start out by saying that I came into this hearing prepared to move forward with this application. I thought that there was the possibility of saying that the accessory structure, which maybe could be redesigned to be a little less much in the only view of the property, that impact would be offset by the improvement to the habitat, and then we could make a finding like that, and we could maybe move forward. But given what I would refer to as the barrage of errors that we've had raised and significant legal concerns, there appears to be no way to go forward anytime in the near future. So I'm going to propose a continuance, and I'm going to propose a continuance to a date that's going to be suggested by staff, and in order to address what were pointed out by the applicant's representative as specific errors in the staff report, errors in the resolution, the lack of the landscape plan, which we just heard was not available and consistent with the requirements, so we need to have that. So all of those things, the administrative problem of creating an administrative determination without going through the appropriate process, so there's an administrative problem, and then a whole barrage of legal problems with respect to prior projects, which I heard the allegation is those prior projects were incorrectly determined to have the outcomes that they had. And that's very concerning to me because I remember many of them very well as in my mind, standing out because the applicant worked so hard to try to come to a conclusion that would be more than was required, and that nobody was forcing these things upon them at all. But I could be wrong, and I think staff needs to have an opportunity to find time to consult with council and come up with specific responses to all the allegations that were raised here at the hearing today before I would be comfortable moving forward at all. So with that statement, I'm going to make a motion to continue this item to a date as recommended by staff, should they have a date certain, or if they don't, I'm open to that too. But the continuance and then to be determined by staff's recommendation.
Do we have a second on that? Commissioner Work, I believe, made the second, so
I
did
will
you?
second the motion for continuance.
And then under discussion now, Commissioner Hartzell?
I just want to add to Commissioner Deal's comments that I was particularly uncomfortable with the kind of vague threat of a taking finding. I was really not fully understanding where the applicant's representative was going with that, but just want to name it as something that I'm particularly uncomfortable with and would like addressed when we come back to this. What were they talking about and what's the concern there?
Thank you. Any other commissioners? Commissioner Deal?
Yeah, just to follow up, Commissioner Herzl makes a great point, which is I'd like staff to let me know whether the denial of a non-habitable accessory structure could be considered a taking in this context, because that's odd to me.
Any other commissioners? If not, when would be a day that we brought again before the commission as far as a continuance? Would April 30th be okay, or is that, do you think we might need more time than that?
I think we should let staff decide that.
Well, that's what I'm asking the staff.
Yes, Commissioner Gomez, staff would actually recommend a date uncertain to address the lengthy and somewhat significant comments raised by the applicant. And I can briefly speak to Commissioner Deal's concerns as well as Commissioner Hartzell's concerns of takings if that's desired by the commission.
Okay, so the motion would still be good then. In this case, any other commissioners? If not, all those in favor of the motion so indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you. With that, we go to other matters, and then we go to item number 4, and that's to appoint David Prina to the North County Land Use Advisory Committee. And I would assume the staff would make a little presentation on this? No?
No, staff's, the materials have been included with the packet and staff's available and the clerk are available should the commission have questions about the recommendations.
Okay, anybody from the chamber or that would like to address this particular item, or anybody on Zoom or emails? I see no, nobody is on Zoom or the chambers, or no emails regarding this particular item. I believe we need a motion to do that. So I need a motion and a second in order to move forward. Okay, Commissioner Shaw makes, oh,
Well, I'm willing, yes, we're on other matters, correct? Sorry,
correct. Yeah,
Sorry.
item number 4.
Yeah, yes, which I'm preparing to make a motion on. I just wanted to also find, when could I make a statement that kind of ties into this land use advisory committee stuff as well? When would that be appropriate?
I guess this might be the time that would be fine.
Thank you. I just wanted to, I waited till this time because it felt like it was appropriate to just thank Mr. David Evans, who's served on a North County Land Use Advisory Committee for many years. My first interaction with him was as just a member of the public, and that was kind of my first time interacting with anyone from planning any of this process. And I don't know if the public is quite aware of what an important role these land use advisory committees play, and that they're volunteers. And I just wanted to thank him. I've seen him at events and different community meetings just kind of keeping tabs on things and listening to the community. And I just really wanted to thank him for his service. It's a huge sacrifice to do those land use advisory committee meetings. And I wish him the best in his future endeavors.
Thank you. So is that sounded like a motion?
And a motion, yes, to appoint Mr. David.
And who seconds it? Okay, Commissioner Hartzell seconds the motion. Any other comments? All those in favor of the motion, so indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstention, motion carries unanimous. And so now we go to item number 5, to appoint Stephen Hooper to the Toro Land Use Advisory Committee. And so any staff comments or reports?
And the same is for all of the other matters that the materials before you, and should the commission have questions, staff's happy to respond as able.
Okay. And so in that particular case, then I'll ask any of the commissioners, any questions? Commissioner Deal?
Yeah, I just want to, in Commissioner Roberts' absence, say I'm really impressed that we've got another person for the Land Use Advisory Committee, and I know she would be very pleased about that. So I'm going to be excited to put this forward when the appropriate moment comes.
Thank you. Any other commissioners? If not, then I'll go ahead and open the public hearing for anybody in the chambers that would like to come up. Seeing none, then do we have anybody in Zoom or any emails? I guess there is no one in either Zoom or any emails. And so bring it back to the commission. With that, we need a motion and a second. Commissioner Deal?
I move the appointment of Stephen Hooper to the Toro Land Use Advisory Committee.
Seconded by Commissioner Mendoza. So any other questions, comments? With that, all those in favor of the motion, so indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. We move on to item number 6. We have to acknowledge the resignation of David Evans from the North County Land Use Advisory Committee and Orville Myers from the Cachagua Land Use Advisory Committee. So any commissioners? Commissioner Deal?
Thank you. I'm just hoping that the letter of appreciation that we send out can make use of some of the comments that Commissioner Shaw has made. And then I would just add that Orville Myers has also been a passionate advocate for his residential community and will continue to be, I think, even when he's not on the Land Use Advisory Committee. So just really hope those letters can include some of the personal recognitions that we have for their service.
Oh, any other commissioners? If not, I believe we need a motion, or we don't need a motion for this? No? Okay, then we go to, I saw some heads saying no, so I guess I'll take it as a no. We go to item number 7, and for number 7, acknowledge the resignation of Thomas Whitley from the Native American and Archaeological Resources Technical Advisory Panel. And so commissioners, Commissioner Deal?
Yes, this one I wanted, it's a new panel relatively, and I know Commissioner Getzelman has been very active with that, but I'm wondering if anybody would do an exit interview just to make sure that the person who's leaving, in this case, could give us any impressions of their service for this new-ish panel.
Yeah, I'd be very happy to do that because I think I talked him into it in the first place, so I probably should. Thank you for the suggestion.
Thank.
If I may, through the chair, staff would like to kind of contribute a comment as well. Staff has had some active conversations with the Native American Archaeological Technical Advisory Panel, NARTAP, about ways in which that panel and hopefully the commission could support to help recruit more participants on that panel. We have had some quorum challenges, and they've also had some active discussions on some feedback that the panel is hoping to contribute to the application process for future members that we've been working on. And so I just wanted to, on behalf of the panel, kind of bring that forward to you today. And certainly if in the interim, if you are able or have suggestions or recommendations of individuals, especially tribal representatives or other professionals in the field who would have an ability and willingness to participate, it would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other? Commissioner Shaw?
Thank you. So if somebody could direct me on how to connect a tribal member with this group, I do know somebody. She usually acts as a tribal monitor. So if I could get that information, I would be happy to pass it along to her if she's not already part of this or aware of it.
Yeah, I think there is a contact email on our on the website. You can also just refer them to myself or to Melissa McDougall as the clerk of the commission, and we will get in touch with them about the procedure for interest.
Thank you. Any other commissioners? Okay, seeing none. Then we have the next item on the agenda is department report, and this would be the time to present any reports that are ready.
Yeah, thank you, through the chair. Very briefly today, just wanted to give an update that we as a department do continue to work on filling a number of vacancies that we have right now and in the near future, and we have been working to get support for approval for planner positions, for in particular to be exempt from the current hiring freeze. So just acknowledging that we are actively working and continue that to fill the vacancies that we have. Additionally, I just wanted to flag for the commission a couple of upcoming items to the board that had, I believe, had previously come to you. One next week, or excuse me, on April 15th, we are tentatively scheduled to have the PLN 230127, the McDougall project appeal, which was a project that was in Carmel Valley, single-family residence, accessory dwelling unit, and junior accessory dwelling unit that was recommended for denial by the commission. So that appeal is going forward to the board. Harper Canyon is also coming forward tentatively to the board on April 15th as well. And let me just look ahead to the next meeting. I think those are the relevant near future ones that I wanted to flag for you all. In addition, we wanted to note that staff has sent out a notification to the public, to board commissioners, informing that we have undergone a temporary restructure of our planning division, our current planning development service development review in particular, both to better address our current staffing vacancies, as well as to try a new structure that helps put a little more redundancy into our process to help us better, we hope, address some of the bottlenecks in our process. So under the new structure, we now have two teams, or two teams that are facilitating different portions of the development project application review. I actually do not want to get the names incorrect. I'm going to ask Ms. Jensen, because I know it's fresher for her, because she's been overseeing that. I'm going to have her give you a little more detail of the teams, just so I don't misname them.
Sure. Thank you. There's two teams. There's a development review team. Their primary roles and duties would be intaking discretionary applications and processing that project through a completeness determination under the Permit Streamlining Act. Which is simply just obtaining the necessary materials to start analyzing the project for consistency. Following that complete determination, a member of our consistency review team will then review that project for then consistency against local and state regulations, preparing any necessary environmental documents, and then bringing that project forward for hearing.
Thank you. In addition, we are also undergoing a series of standard checklist rollouts and kind of a change to our process with regard to checklists that are imminent. So we have been working on a single-family residential standard checklist. We've not rolled that out yet, which we hope is imminent to be rolled out. With that will come kind of some refinements to our intake structure, and we are also working towards, over the next month to two, establishing standard checklists for a number of other project types that we have as well. Again, this is a part of our efforts to also streamline our permit process and automate where we can. So there are various activities, and as we do roll those out, we'll try to advise the commission as well so that you're aware, and should you get questions from applicants or public members, so you're able to respond or know to refer them to us.
Thank you. And I guess if there are no other department reports, we move to the last item, which is adjournment. And so this meeting is adjourned at 10:56 a.m. Thank you very much. Have a great rest of the day.